Hey guys, welcome to Digital Portrait Drawing Lesson 4, where we will be talking about the basic head proportions and how to create sort of a mechanical sketch in knowing where to put what. Okay, so what we have here is our sketch paper off-white rotated to portrait orientation, and I have a basic head shape brought in that I copied from the head reference file that I've talked about before. And now what we're going to do is just start blocking out exactly where the different features go on the face. This is one of the most critical steps, because if you do not have the features positioned properly, no matter how well drawn they are, the portrait will not look right. It will always look a little bit off, and it'll be hard to sort of put your finger on exactly what's wrong with it. But one of the most common mistakes of beginning artists is to not carefully place the position of the facial elements before they begin drawing it out. So what we're going to do here is very mechanically detail exactly where things go and how to measure out the position using the features of the face itself. Okay, well, first of all, let's discuss the shape of the head. Heads are not round. They're actually more egg-shaped than anything else. And the reference files that I've included will show a egg-shaped head that once you've got it sketched in and mechanically defined, you will probably need to block out a little bit more depending on the actual shape of the face that you're attempting to draw. Now, it's bisected both horizontally and vertically. This is because the vertical line shows the symmetry between the two. That's pretty obvious. But now the horizontal line, many people don't realize the eyes lie in the very center of the head. They're not up near the top like instinctively you try to put them. There's actually a lot of the head that is covered by hair up here, and it makes it look like the eyes are a lot higher up than they really are. So if you look at a head straight on, the eyes are on that central line. That's why we have the lines on these reference images for you. So I'm going to go ahead and lower the opacity just enough on that, just so we can sort of see it. I've got my first layer here, and I'm just going to go ahead and sketch out this egg-shaped head. Okay, so now we have the head sort of sketched out on that new layer there. If we turn off the reference, we can see our egg head. I'm going to call this the shape layer, all right? And then I'm going to add a guide layer, because what we need to do next is bisect the width of this head into 5 equal sections. And the reason we need to do that is because a head is traditionally 5 eyes wide, and is the shape of the eye that we are going to use as the measurement for all of our portrait mechanics. So the thing to do is to create a selection, the exact width right there. Okay, now we're going to go to the select menu, transform selection. Okay, and so when we go up here, let's set the width to exactly 20%, because that is 1/5 of the overall width, and that gives us the eye width. So we hit enter to apply that transformation, and so now we have our 1/5 the width of one of our eyes. So what we're going to do is go ahead and move that over here, and we're going to start using this as a measurement stick just for the width right now. We'll create another one in just a second that's a little more accurate, because right now we only have the width. So I'm making this layer 1, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit Alt backspace to fill that selection in and cancel it out. So now what we can do is start beginning to use this as a measuring stick. Sharpen that pencil up and create those straight lines by clicking, holding down Shift. So straight line there, straight line there. Let's move our measurement back to the guide. Some more straight lines. Okay, so now we have our 5 subsections of this head. So our 5 evenly spaced columns of eye widths is what these are turning out to be, because the head is 5 eyes wide. And I've decided to do these in blue just because I thought it'd be easier for us to tell what is a guideline and what is a not guideline. So we have our layer 1 here, which we've been using as our measuring stick. We're going to continue to use that because what we need now is a half eye width. So we've got our 1 eye width is what this block is. We're going to change it to half of that by changing the width to 50%. Commit that transform. That's good. So now let's turn that sideways, rotate it 50 degrees, because the average human eye is twice as wide as it is tall, or half as tall as it is wide. So if the width is 100%, the height is 50%. And we're going to line that up so the midpoint of that is along this horizontal line. Now if we turn on the show transform controls, we can see exactly where that midpoint is. Pop it down just a little bit so it's right along that horizontal line. Very good. And then let's make sure that the width is exactly how we want it. Now, this becomes essentially the building block for the measuring of the rest of the proportions within the face. So I'm going to call this the eye block because we will now use that as the measuring stick. But before we go beyond that, what we see here, that creates one eye. That is the shape of one eye there. So I'm going to go ahead and put our first horizontal line right there, right along the top. All right, and then the other one, I'm going to go right on the inside, right on the bottom of it here, but I'm only going to do the inside part. I'm not going to go all the way across like I did on the other one, and that'll become apparent in just a moment. So I'm going to hide the eye block right now. These two rectangles that we've just created, those are going to become the eye shapes. So the eyes, just to begin with, are going to be well, the standard almond shape. We'll deal more as to the intricacies of the mechanics of drawing individual eyes in a later lesson, but right now they're going to be just a standard sharpened oval, so to speak. We'll do that on both sides. You go from the midpoint here where the dotted line's connecting, you're going to hit the top guide there. Just really rough right now. Doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be recognizable as the standard eye shapes. Okay, so next let's block out exactly where the nose is going to go. Now the width of the nose is generally the distance of one eye, so it's the middle eye width that we see here. Let's reveal our little measuring block again. And let's now move that over. So it's that same width, but it is 1.5 of these widths down from the center line. So I've got one there. I'm going to hold down the Alt key to drag a second one along until it pops into place at the bottom. And then I'm going to Control Transform this copied one and change the height to 50% of that. And again, pop that up. Alright, so then this right here, this bottom line here, shows where the very tip of that nose is going to be. Now noses range in all different types and styles and shapes, but mostly they have a very consistent bottom part to come up into the nostril area. Okay, so now the general shape of the nose is indicated. It's not very well illustrated at this point. It's just a sketch to hold the place. We need to space out exactly where we want the mouth to be. All right, and again, we will use the same eye block spacing technique. Let's take this block, let's move it down, rotate it sideways. All right, move it right in position. Okay, now the very bottom tip of the lip will be one eye length down from the tip of the nose, and the top of the lip will be at the midway point. So again, let's grab our guideline again, change back to a blue color. And hit that bottom spot. And then we need to see that middle spot again. So let's grab that. Okay, it's going to be right there. It actually might be easiest to go ahead and just put a regular guideline there. So I've got my rulers turned on by pressing Control or Command R. And I'm just going to drag a guideline straight down and then go and draw my guideline in again. Now the width of the mouth ends up being directly below, the very tips of the mouth is directly below the centers of the eyes. So if we take our eye block back up to the eye, to its little home spot up there, drag another guideline out just so we can see that one. Alright, we'll create our line there, move the eye block over to the other eye spot, put a guideline there, then draw in our reference guide for this tip of the mouth. Okay. Now let's move our reference guide back to the middle here. And this time I'm going to make a copy of it. And on the copied one, Control transform it again. And I'm going to change this height to 33%. Because the height of the upper lip is 1/3 the height of the actual mouth. So once again, we apply that transform. Add another guideline. This one's a very thin one though. Okay, so let's go back to our shape layer, our default 2B pencil, and sketch in what the mouth should look like. Okay, so the corners of the mouth touch these vertical guides that's at the midpoint of where the eyes are, and the horizontal guide that is 1/3 of the height of the mouth. Alright, so from there, let's go ahead and sketch in where the ears belong. Now the ears will start where this horizontal line meets this midpoint. So that's right along the corner of the eye where that meets, and it will go up only to the top edge of the eye and then come all the way down to meet this bottom horizontal where the nose is. So next we need to measure out where to put the eyebrows. So once again, let's use our eye block measuring stick. We're going to move this up to where the eyes are here. We're going to rotate this one 90 degrees because the top of the eyebrows are one eye width above the bottom of the eye. We're measuring from the bottom of the eye one width upwards, and we're adding another guide right there. And that will be the peak of where the eyebrows are. Now, eyebrows come in a lot of different shapes and styles. It's hard to say where they really start and end other than that loose height guidance that I just gave. But generally they will start along the same vertical line right where the eye is on the inside corner of the eye, and they'll end up peaking gradually over on sort of the right third of where that horizontal meets, and then they go beyond the eye and sort of slant back down. Now this is just sort of general guidance, especially on eyebrows. Eyebrows are so different for every person. And on that note, it's really important to realize that these facial features, this is just a general guide. Every face is different. This is basic proportions that most human faces conform to, not all. There's plenty of variations. Some have skinnier faces, some have wider, some have longer, some have eyes closer together. This is just a general guide to begin with. And you go from here and you sort of customize it out as needed. But this is just always the basic starting point to make sure you get things in generally the right spot. Okay, so now that we have two eyebrows, let's talk about a secondary check measure, a way of sort of double checking yourself to make sure you're getting things close to where they need to be. This is called the triangular measurement technique. So I've got my pen tool. I'm going to go ahead and just set up my stroke and fill real quick here. Okay. You end up drawing a triangle in the middle of the face to measure things out, just to double check. We'll start with the outside corner of this one eye, right along the midpoint there, and then we come straight across to the opposite corner of this eye, and then the third corner is down at the very bottom center of the lip, so that bottom edge right in the middle. Now, this triangle should be an equilateral triangle, which means all three sides should be the same in length, or actually pretty close to it. Again, we talked about how there's variations in every face, but this triangle should be really close to the same on all three sides. How do we check that? Well, we take it and we rotate it 45 degrees and position it back in place. And that actually looks pretty good. Might be a little bit short on that side, but that's, I think, within the realm of variation. I think that's all right. Okay, and then finally, let's go ahead and make this portrait not a bald one. So if you know what hairstyle you're going to want to use for this, just sort of sketch it in. Hair is its own entity all to itself. But the thing to note at this point is that hair doesn't go inside the head. It goes outside the head, and it usually takes up a lot more volume than you anticipate. So not only does it cover much of the forehead, the volume of the hair goes way up over where you would expect it to be on the scalp itself. It's not tight to the scalp. It usually has a lot of volume coming up. Now at this point, I'm not even really sure this is what I want to do for the hair, but it's just something that I want to put in just so that it doesn't look quite so creepy with just that bald head sitting there. Alright, so once we get the hair just sort of roughly put in there so it's a little more appropriate to look at and to visualize, let's go ahead and hide those guide layers and even the basic head shape layer. And we can see what we've got with our basic mechanical sketch. And this is going to be then used to create the portrait, at least the front facing portrait, on top of, just as a way of making sure everything is positioned where it needs to be. Now it's important that you be able to do this exercise and measure out things as they should be completely and entirely there. But as a way of assisting you with generating these proportions, I've included a basic proportions file in with the course files that has this all laid out as to what goes where, and I've got the guidelines drawn so you can see with the eye block as a measurement stick and everything laid out for you to use as a reference. I would not encourage you to use this to start your drawings with. Again, this is just a reference, just so when you need to know how many eye shapes down was the nose from the eyes, you can take a look at this and you can be able to figure it out pretty quickly. Alright guys, so that's the basic head proportions, and that brings lesson 4 to a conclusion. I know that was a lot of information and there was a lot of detail thrown into there. You may have to go back and reference some of this material more than once. I understand. Be sure to check the class notes. I put in there exactly what all those measurements are, and be sure to see the reference file too, just to remind yourself so you don't have to rewatch the video completely. Be sure to check out lesson 5 next, where we'll begin blocking out that front view portrait. So now that we've got a good mechanical sketch and we've nailed down where things go, let's start filling things in.